that have allergies, respiratory kinds of conditions, and those filters can be a big help. The other thing that you can put on a hot air or forced air system would be a humidity control, whether that needs to be adding or taking away, kind of depending on the season. Taking away, that's what an air conditioner does automatically. So you don't usually need to do that in the wintertime. Hot air can tend to be drier heat, type of heat, and dry out your skin. I know I notice it in our home with the geothermal that we have. It's a forced air system, and I tend to be more itchy in the wintertime. And so what we've learned is that if we keep a humidifier as part of that system, that we can keep that under control. Hot water. A typical way of thinking about heat distribution for a hot water system is going to be radiators. And whether it's the old cast iron stand-up, that you can sit on, kinds of radiators, a baseboard radiator, and then within baseboard you have cast iron, and you have what generically we call slant fin, but it's a copper tubing with aluminum fins on that allows the air to move through it. And all those work on convection. There's certainly, most systems, there's a circulator or a pump that's bringing the hot water from the boiler, circulating it throughout the house, and then as it gets into the radiators, the reason those big stand-up radiators had all these verticals with the holes in between wasn't to make you have to dust more often or make it a mess when you got to paint, but so that air could move through there, and there's natural convection. As that warm air rises off the top, it pulls in cool air at the bottom, and it just keeps things circulating. There's also the possibility of radiant tubing within a hot water distribution system, and that is typically thought of, that's a heat that's under the floor. I know that I've seen it in walls already. It's incorporated sometimes into towel bars for towel warmers that might be in your bathroom, but initially I think that was a style or a type of wall heater, and somebody said, hey, they got used to hanging their clothes on in there when they came in from sledding or whatever, I'd like my towels to be that warm, so they got a little more creative with it and decided to call it a towel warmer instead of just a wall radiator. Another way that you can use the hot water is in conjunction with a forced air system. And that's really what we have here. We have a natural gas fired boiler that heats the water. The water then goes into the forced air system, in which much like your car radiator, a series of tubing back and forth, and then when the thermostat calls for it to be warmer in the house, the hot water starts circulating, and a few minutes later the fan turns on and blows across those coils, thereby warming up the air and blows it throughout the building and comes out the outlets. So you can have that kind of a combination. There's steam heat that I've been in the trades for 35 years, and I don't know that I've ever worked on a new installation of steam. Certainly been around them where it was a retrofit, a remodel kind of thing where they've been in place. Probably not a whole lot of people that even have the technology or the understanding to work on steam these days. But steam, I think we all would understand when you put a pot of water on the stove and it starts boiling, the steam comes off, and you can see that steam come up, and it's definitely hot. You can burn yourself on that kind of thing. And that was really done in the beginning because they hadn't yet figured out how to circulate water. Many homes didn't have electricity and so forth, and so that was just really a natural convection way of the steam boiler would be down in the basement. The pipes were all situated in such a way that the hot steam would rise on up through the building into the radiators, warm up the cast iron, and the cast iron would then, through natural convection, come out into the room and heat things. So Those are still around. The initial ones that I mentioned, the wood, coal, corn, the pellets, those kinds of things, typically we think of those as a freestanding stove, could be an insert that goes into a fireplace. The last, 10, 15 years or so, people have come out with the outdoor ones that were, you don't want to bring all that wood and dirt inside your house, you have it outside. But probably originally, most of those kinds of heat was just a natural convection. You set the potbelly stove in the middle of the room and you fired it up, and the heat would naturally radiate out from that and heat the space. But you can tie any of those kinds of fuel sources into a hot air system or into a hot water for distribution throughout the house. So convection, just maybe to go over a few of those terms again, convection is just uses the natural law of heat rises and heat's going to move out. So convection type heat is going to be something that's down low. Irradiant type heat is heating objects. The office that we had before we moved into here, which was back about 13, 14 years ago now, we had an electric radiant heat in the ceiling up above the drywall. And one of the things that we had to get used to in there is that people would sometimes think their feet were cold, not think, but their feet would be cold because they were seated under a desk, and that their feet weren't at a place where that radiation would heat it up. And so we learned about that, and you learn to deal with those kinds of things. And over time, you're going to have, as the objects get heated up, then they do a natural convection, and the air gets warmed up in that way. Anytime that it's time for a new heating system or an air conditioning, you certainly want to talk with a professional about it. But one of the things that you want to make sure that they do is to run heat and cooling load calculations. And that's something that's going to take some time to do. You need to figure out the square footage, the cubic feet of space that you're heating or cooling, because certainly, as you can imagine, a room like this, if the ceilings were all this high, is a whole lot different than the 20-some foot ceilings that we have in here. And the amount of glass and the direction that it's facing. For us, south is about over in this direction. We get a lot of afternoon solar gain. Our main costs here on this building are not heating. We have a spray foam urethane insulation everywhere, so it's well insulated. So we have 2.5 to maybe 3 months out of the year when we use the heat in here. Typically by like the third week of February, the air conditioner is starting to run already. And part of that is because of the orientation. We get a lot of solar gain, so we get the heat from that. But we also have 10 people in here working, and each time we breathe, we're putting some more heat out into the space. We have computers and copiers, all the light bulbs, all those kinds of things become part of heating and cooling load calculations. So it's going to take a professional some time to do that. They should be able to provide you with a report, and it's not just a one-page report. I mean, when these things are done, it's probably 10 pages. I think I've seen them, even higher than that. Oftentimes people think, well, I just oversize it because I want to make sure. And certainly you do want to make sure, but my understanding is that much like a car runs most efficiently on the highway when it's up to speed and can just stay cruising along, both a heater and an air conditioner are going to operate much the same. And if it's oversized, it's going to do the job much quicker getting to the correct temperature, so therefore it never really gets up to speed and runs efficiently. It's kind of doing more starting and stopping, which is the expensive part, and it's harder on equipment the oftener that it starts and stops. So that's the general overview that I have.